Focusing in about 24 minutes from now, Nirmala Sitharaman, our finance minister, will be announcing her second package. This is part of Prime Minister Modi's economic vaccine to ventilate the Indian economy. The focus today is likely to be on agriculture and allied activities. The finance minister might also touch upon the supply chain mechanics to find ways of ensuring that the supply chain is not disrupted. Joining us at this time for perspective on what to expect, two of our senior-most reporters and editors, Rahul Srivastava, National Affairs Editor, Rajiv Dubey, edits Business Today. I want to go across Rahul Srivastava first. Rahul, you were quite on the ball in figuring out what would happen in Nirmala Sitharaman's first press conference. What can you tell our viewers this afternoon about what's likely to be announced by the Finance Minister at 4 p.m. this afternoon?
Rahul, one thing is clear that the focus is going to be agriculture today, and it is one of the sectors, Rahul. If we see this COVID pandemic period of last 2.5 months, so it has been one of the good performing sectors, or perhaps the lone good performing sectors in the country. But it is going through a very serious crisis. As far as the Agriculture Ministry assessment is concerned, they feel that something close to 50% of dairy has been lost. The entire flour business has been lost. Food and vegetable losses have been close to 80%. While procurement exercise is on, there has been great problems of transport as far as the food grain is concerned. What sources in the Agriculture Ministry are saying that the need of the hour is better credit for the Kharif crop. Perhaps there could be a measure on that. The second is there was a proposal that the farmers should be given certain amount of cash relief at this moment, because the seed supplies are slightly erratic because of the restrictions, and they may have to buy seeds from the local sites. So could there be an enhancement as far as the Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Yojana is concerned, under which 6,000 crore is given to farmers per annum. Last year, it was disbursed amount was 57,000 crore. This time around, there is a possibility they could be raised up till 75,000 crores per annum. Beyond that, horticulture, food processing, and certain incentives are coming. This is what sources are saying. There is also talk about food grain storage incentives being given because we are going through a crisis.
Now, all this is great. Just hold that thought for a second, Rahul.
Again, this time
the question
around,
is,
like yesterday, what it seems that the government will give incentives.
No, this is great, and of course agriculture should be backed, but the question that's in the minds of people who are watching is what happens to the migrants, the urban workers who are going back home. They desperately need money, some kind of income support. When is that going to be pushed through? Where is that stuck at this moment? How soon will that be announced? What is the government planning, Rahul?
Rahul, I have spoken to several people. Two of them were saying there is a possibility that the government may hasten the entire labor issue, could bring it today, but I do not have absolute confirmation on that. There is a buzz that the government is trying to speed it up given the crisis, and also the kind of criticism the government is facing, because MSME element is fine, but the labor crisis is a real in-your-face kind of a crisis which the government needs to address. It could well come today, but I do not have an absolute confirmation.
Rajiv Dubey, what are you and the Business Today team hearing? What should people expect? What, according to you, are the biggest challenges in the agriculture sector? How do you think the Finance Minister hopes to fix them right?
So, Rahul, the biggest expectation, of course, is the direct benefit transfer, as Rahul Srivastava mentioned.
But hasn't that already happened? So what will be new?
Per 2,000 has happened. Can you front load the rest of it? Can you front load at least half of, or more than half, maybe 2/3 of the 6,000 that you're supposed to give? Can you enhance it?
When would it have got paid into the accounts of the farmers?
The other major expectation, Rahul, in 3 installments, 2,000, 2,000, 2,000. That's how it goes. Every 4 months.
No, so I'm saying the first installment is out. When would the next installment in the normal course have gone?
It would have gone 8 months from the start of the fiscal, so it would have gone around August, which can be front loaded if possible, right? So the DBT is the biggest expectation. The second big thing is that the supply chain is totally fractured. The if you see the wheat reaching the mandis was only about 6% about 15 days back. Onion was about 30% of what should have been. Potato was about 41%. So the farm produce, which has been lying, and we've had a bumper crop this year as well. The tragedy of Indian agriculture is that the year you have a bumper crop, that's the year that the farmer dreads the most, because that's when he's going to get the least price. So the best thing that the government can do possibly is that if it can ensure that the farm produce reaches the consumer at the best possible remunerative price to the farmer and with least wastage, that's the best service that the center can do. But the problem with the agriculture as a subject is that agriculture, Rahul, is not a central subject. It's not even a concurrent subject. It's actually a state subject. So the center is really hamstrung in this area. Many of these issues will have to be dealt by the states, and in the states, the problem is the APMC markets, which are usurious, which have a vice-like grip of the politicians of all levels, from at the state level, right, going up to the village level. And unless the APMC Act is abandoned or is relaxed very substantially, which is the toughest job in the world, this is not going to take place. The problem with the center is that at this point in time, it can only provide direct relief in terms of cash. Everything else is going to take very long, and it's actually a subject of the state. Okay. It's not a central subject. So, it's not even a concurrent subject. So it has to be dealt by the state. Whatever the center does will have to eventually be done by the state.
Let's spend a moment focusing on the reactions to Nirmala Sitharaman's announcements yesterday, which the finance minister focused on the micro, small and medium enterprises. Largely favorable reactions, but some questions being asked about whether enough is done to stimulate demand, because will companies want to produce? They may have credit available now, which is guaranteed by the government, but will they want to produce unless they are certain that the product will be consumed? So first, let's show you what Nirmala Sitharaman said in that press conference, and then we'll get reactions to how people are responding to what we've already seen on the table so far.
There is a fund being created for infusing about 50,000 crore as equity into the MSMEs. This will benefit those MSMEs who have the potential and who are viable. So we spoke about those who are standard. We spoke about those who are NPAs and stressed. Now I'm talking about MSMEs who may be doing viable business and who need hand-holding because of the situation thanks to the COVID. So this fund with a corpus of 10,000 crores through mother fund and daughter fund framework will be able to provide the growth potential MSMEs greater support, and this, we think, will help MSMEs to expand their capacities. A collateral-free automatic loan for MSMEs which is being provided. This will give facility up to 3 lakh crores. 25 crore outstanding for those MSME units for whom 25 crore is the outstanding loan, or 100 crores whose turnover will benefit from this. These loans will have a 4-year tenure, and there will be a moratorium given for 12 months. These are going to be 100% credit guaranteed over as a cover given to banks and NBFCs on principal and interest. So this is going to be available till 31st October 2020. There are no guarantee fees, no fresh collaterals required. So I guess this will benefit 45 lakh units so that they can resume their business activity and also safeguard jobs. Next facility also for the NBFCs is to give 45,000 crore liquidity infusion through a partial credit guarantee scheme for the NBFCs in particular. This is an existing scheme, but we are expanding its scope. Expanding its scope only because it will now cover borrowings such as primary bond issued, the commercial papers. So all these will constitute the liability side of the balance sheet, but we are getting into that area also. But in this case, as different from the previous one, 20%, the first 20% loss alone will be borne by the guarantor, which is Government of.
So those are the key announcements from the Finance Minister yesterday. That's the live feed coming in from the venue of the press conference at 4 p.m. We have about 13 minutes to go for the press conference to start. Rajiv Dubey, what's been the broad thrust of the reactions coming in from small and medium enterprises to the announcements yesterday? Net, how many of the companies which were fearing that they will sink because of the pandemic will now be able to survive this crisis? What's the sense?
So, Rahul, the majority of the companies that were in that state were actually expecting a wage support from the government, which didn't happen. What happened was a bit of an EPF support, the employer's contribution support. That was the biggest disappointment as far as the companies are concerned. What the government has done is to provide them enough liquidity to be able to restart when the lockdown opens. But what they were expecting was a support for the period of the lockdown, 50 days, 60 days, whatever, 2 months of 3 months of wage support that they were expecting. That didn't happen. As far as this enabler is concerned, the total outgo from the center, Rahul, of this 6 lakh crore announcement is about 50,000 crore from the center's kitty. Everything else is going to be either a guarantee or is going to be borne by a power finance corporation or rural electrification corporation or the banks who will have to give those loans. So really, not much is going out of the government's kitty, not much is going out of the government's balance sheet. So it's very clear that the government is being very realistic, restrictive about what it's giving out, and it's keeping keeping a very tight control over the expenses that it will entail.
No,
So
which isn't necessarily such a bad thing. What it suggests is that the government doesn't believe in handouts or doles, because you can pay a certain amount of money, but unless the company itself is able to restart its operations, that money will be a sunk cost. And therefore, if the company restarts, they're hoping that will enable that the employers will be able to pay their workers. That's the logic, at least that's the economic framework that's at play, which could indicate the mood when it comes to other things as well. It's in keeping with Modi's idea that I don't like handouts. Handouts are a Congress legacy. I don't believe in handouts. I want to make people self-reliant. Rajiv.
Yes, so Rahul, that it also makes it very clear that of this 20 lakh crore, clearly what the government will spend out of this is going to be very limited, most likely going to be limited to that 4.2 lakh crore additional borrowing, maybe 5 lakh crore additional borrowing that the government is going to entail in this fiscal, and in which case this is more of a monetary stimulus or a liquidity enhancement in the economy than a direct fiscal stimulus in the economy. So those are the two differences. It's the fiscal stimulus that actually leads to a kick-starting of the economy. Right now, what is required is to jumpstart this economy in the form of either tax cuts, which will make things affordable and people will have the confidence to spend, or in the form of direct benefit transfers, or in the form of wage support to small enterprises, or to payroll support. That's the kind of...
No, but the one other way to do it, in addition to the options you mentioned, Rajiv, is to have a massive public works program, Rahul Srivastava, in the manner that we had in the United States as part of the New Deal, which really led to government creating the public infrastructure, which saw the US through the large part of the 20th century, which had a huge multiplier effect with cement, steel, and all manner of industries getting activated. A lot of the contracts went out of the private sector. Is that in the works at all in India, or does the government feel fiscally constrained that it doesn't have the revenue to be able to unleash a massive public infrastructure creation program?
Rahul, over the last 1 month, Prime Minister has had two meetings as far as this large infrastructure program that the Prime Minister had talked about, that 100 lakh crore worth infrastructure projects. And Nirmala Sitharaman, the Finance Minister, has been actively working on this entire very element. But in terms of a movement on it, in terms of a very tangible physical movement on it, one has not seen. Though again, among these 5 Ratnas that the Prime Minister spoke in his address to the nation, infrastructure was one of them. But one in terms of creating visible asset coming in that direction, and also visible movement on the ground, that you have something operating on the ground and you can absorb a lot of workers suddenly. That does not seem to be happening. I think that again will take certainly a lot of time.
Okay, I want to show our viewers some of the political reactions to the Finance Minister's first press conference. The Congress hit back. We saw Sitaram Yechuri when he spoke to us yesterday, saying that the government has its priorities wrong. MSMEs, etc. is all okay, but the biggest problem at this moment is those urban laborers who are marching back home. They are hungry, they are frustrated, they are fighting over biscuits. They need direct cash support. Why is that not coming through? Let's show you some of the political reactions to the Finance Minister's first press conference.
Even before COVID-19 struck India, Indian economy was sick and it was in deep crisis. Now we have to face pandemic. The Finance Minister has made certain announcements with regard to micro, small, medium sector and how far they are going to benefit the working people. We will have to wait and see.
Let me first point out that there is nothing, absolutely nothing, in what the Finance Minister said today for the lakhs of poor, hungry, and devastated migrant workers who have walked, and many thousands are still walking back to their home states. This is a cruel blow dealt to those who toil every day. There is also nothing, absolutely nothing, by way of cash transfer to the bottom half of the population, 13 crore families who've been pushed into destitution. Only yesterday, Professor Thomas Piketty pleaded for cash transfers to the poor.
See, the basic problem that we'll face going into the future is that people are losing confidence, the consumption is low, there's no demand in the market. So when factories, industry make and produce goods and services, there has to be adequate demand by the people. For that, they need cash in their hands, they need money. I have not seen really a huge cash transfer to the consumers or to the citizens of India, except for that initial few hundred rupees in the Jan Dhan accounts. While it's good to promote industry and MSME sector, I think it's a positive thing. But just by giving loans, you can't kickstart the economy. Today, there is a fall in confidence, fall in consumption levels, and I've always advocated if you give cash in the hands of the poorest people, they will buy things, especially in the hinterland. So therefore, we have to focus on giving people more disposable income so that they can start getting back into the consumption cycle.
দেখুন প্রধানমন্ত্রী যখন বলেছিলেন 20 লক্ষ কোটি টাকার প্যাকেজ করা হচ্ছে আমরা একটা আশান্বিত হয়েছিলাম হয়তোবা এফআরবিএমটা বাড়বে 3% থেকে 5%। আমরা ভেবেছিলাম জিডিপিটা অ্যাটলিস্ট 6% হবে মিনিমাম 10 লক্ষ কোটি টাকার। আমরা ভেবেছিলাম যে আমাদের ডিভলিউশনে যে টাকাটা পাচ্ছি না সেই টাকাটা পারবে। আমরা ভেবেছিলাম মনিটরিয়ামে আমাদের একটু হেল্প করা হবে। কিছু তো হলোই না, উপরন্তু ভাওতার পর ভাওতা। এটা কি? দেশকে এইভাবে ভাওতা দেওয়ার মানেটা কি?
The Union Finance Minister did not for once mention a term called state government. If you don't provide additional money, pay what is owed to the states, GST compensation. This is unforgivable.
The primary problem for the states seems to be that the centre, they believe, is not releasing GST money which is due to the states, and we saw that question being posed in the press conference, to which the response was that because GST can now be paid till June, the government doesn't have a full sense of what the GST numbers are, and therefore that's the reason why GST collections for April haven't been declared. Now, Rahul Srivastav, how badly off are the states? And we're seeing complaints come in not just from opposition-ruled states, but even from BJP-ruled states. What's the government doing? Because there's so many different sections that are asking for packages and aid, and the state governments are getting very close to the brink of desperation.
Rahul, I think the states are tottering. Be it the big states, big is the industrialized states like Maharashtra and others, the state revenues are really bad shape. See, for example, for a very long time, there were no liquor sales and there were very poor fuel sales. In fact, in the first week of April, petrol sales were down, petrol, diesel sales were down by almost 67%, and aviation fuel sales were down to by 90%. Now, in that scenario where these two are the largest contributors to the state government coffers, the states were not earning their own revenue. Then comes the second aspect, that since retail sales were down, the GST collections are poor, the state revenues will go down. Now, there is another double whammy for them, that states like Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu and others, which were getting more revenue in the pre-GST era, they are supposed to get a compensation. Now, they will get lesser revenue, worse, their own compensation for that lowered revenue is not going to be coming. What it also means that the central revenue share is also going to go down, collections are going to go down. So, as per the Finance Commission recommendations, even that avenue, the state government is going to get lesser money. Most of the states like Punjab, which indulge in a lot of dole in terms of free electricity and others, they are going to have a very serious crisis by the time fiscal 2021 ends, because their expenditure would be too high. They may be borrowing, which will actually increase their next year's interest payments. It's going to be a terrible story
now
financially.
Remember, there are two things that are
in the
playing
country.
out simultaneously. One, of course, is the economic package. The other is the health crisis. And states were asked to submit their recommendations by the 15th of May to the centre about what lockdown 4.0 should look like. Rahul, there was a big meeting led by the Prime Minister yesterday. Amit Shah was there. The Defence Minister Rajnath Singh was there. What has emerged? What's the contour of what life post the 17th of May is going to look like? Do we know yet?
Rahul, I think what I have spoken to two ministers, what they are saying that the states have to be empowered. The next phase, this is exactly the term he used, that in the next phase, it has to be the states, because the states have their own compulsions, because they have to deal with the crisis at their local level. So deciding a containment zone and a buffer zone or a hot zone and other elements cannot be operated easily if restrictions have to be eased. Say, for example, in Delhi, if Connaught Place is to be has to be cordoned off, and then Panchkuya and others have to start functioning, the state government is more in a position to handle them. So the states are definitely going to get certain amount of push. Instead of a large lockdown, what it also seems like, containment of the hot zones or containment zones are going to get locked down. These are the two broad templates which seem to be emerging, in which it seems that the Prime Minister, the Home Ministry will create restrictions and easing.
So in about a minute from now, Nirmala Sitharaman's press conference is supposed to start. We don't know whether it's running on time or a few minutes late. But what I want to ask Rajiv Dubey, as we wait for the Finance Minister to arrive and start presenting her second set of recommendations and announcements for reviving the economy, how much of India Inc. is up and running post the 20th of April, especially in the non-red zones, in the green zones, in the orange zones? There were permissions given to companies to restart. What's been the feedback on a pan-India basis? How many companies have been able to restart their operations, and what more are they looking for post the 17th of May?
So, Rahul, if you look at it during the lockdown period, we were expecting that about 30% of the economy is functioning. So 30% of the companies were functioning because they were in the categories which allowed them to function. Post that, just in places like Noida, Greater Noida, industrial areas, thousands of companies have been allowed to restart. But the capacity at which they are running is about 20 to 25%. Nobody is able to function beyond this, largely because there is no the workers have gone back home, and it will take them. One is the restriction from the state governments that you cannot have more than Some states are saying 30%, some states are saying 50% workforce. But that workforce itself is not available. Most of these plants are actually functioning at 20% capacity.
No,
or
so workforce not being available
capacity,
is one challenge.
Capacity.
The other challenge is
so
that
is
there demand for products? Why would any company produce at 100% capacity unless it's certain that the products that they manufacture will ultimately be consumed?
Yes, I mean this is the real problem. Unless the demand centers open up, the